This is the second time I've seen this exact question today, so I feel like this must be one that's pretty commonly going to get popped out by Delta Math. It only has a limited bank of problems, so the fact that I've seen this now twice today means that there's a good chance that you will too. So right away, what do we notice this is going to be? Yeah, I mean the GCF is going to be negative, but just think a little bit past that. What eventually type of factoring do we have? It'll be a grouping problem, right? So let's go down that road. The mistake I heard earlier that made me kind of really I didn't like I just kind of got in the way of it is someone said, okay, I can pull out y squared. And it's like, no, I think when I saw this problem earlier, it had k's in it and not y's. But the point is, you're not ready for that. Like if you're thinking about pulling out y squared, then you're thinking ahead to the grouping part. And again, we're not ready for that, right? We have to pull out what we call a global GCF. So right now I'm just looking for something that I can pull out of all four parts of the problem, which um, Engage, you nailed it. It's definitely going to be a negative because the problem starts with a negative. And then the best I can do is pull out a 2, right? There's no variables in common, so I'm going to start by pulling out the -2. Again, this is not part of the draw the wall grouping process. GCF always happens before we start the actual problem. So with the GCF of -2 out, now I'm going to rebuild the problem in here. And what am I going to be left with? Exactly. Perfect on that one. How about the next one? Good. Next one. Next one. Perfect. So that step shouldn't be a struggle. Need to pause my recording real quick. So any questions on the GCF? All right, and now we can group, okay? But that had to come out first. And so now we're going to take, and this is where you put the GCF on timeout. So I'm going to take my -2 and I'm going to kind of, I don't know, sure, timeout for -2. And then we're just going to do the math problem that's left over, and that's right here. So this is where we draw the wall. And what do we get out of the left half? Y squared for sure. See, now we're into the actual stuff that was on the last quiz. This is where we're now getting into the meat and potatoes. So once you pull the GCF, I've said this 50 times, then you expose the actual math problem, right? And so now if we pulled y squared, I'm only pulling it out of the side left of the wall, the group left of the wall, right? And that leaves behind what? Y. Okay. Nope. So it goes for all of you. And again, I know some of you aren't listening, and it may be because you've already done this problem. And you're welcome. If you want to ignore me, just don't talk over me or play on your phone. But do you know what happens when I'm doing a GCF and I pull out an entire term as the GCF? Do you know what I have to do to fill it back in? You have to put a 1. And so because I gutted, I'm going to point to it with a red arrow for you. Because I gutted the entirety of that term by pulling it out, a 1 goes in his stead. That's the placeholder, we call it. And now we get to the back half of the wall, and what do we do? Drop the minus. Good. Like we're not going anywhere until we acknowledge that that sign comes first. Good job. And now what is the common factor of y and 1? Just 1. And I need to put it for reasons that should by now be pretty obvious, but it's very important, that 1. And then we're going to rebuild and ask ourselves what goes in here. And so, yeah, so the -y switches to +y and the -1 switches to +1. So at this point, it's time for us to collect all of our parts and pieces and say to the world, here is my answer. So here it goes. The GCF goes in front. The common factor I like to put next, but you don't have to. And then the leftovers, what I have up on my board in green and yellow, is going to be where I always build my last factor, which is leftovers combined with leftovers. Does that feel okay? Ready to hit full send on this one? You shouldn't be nodding your head because this problem will be wrong if I hit full send. What have we done wrong? There's a difference of squares. And this, mark my words, is going to separate the A's from the C's. Not even A's and B's. This is going to be A's to C's and B's to D's and C's to F's. You've got to look at that x squared minus 1 or y squared minus 1. And as quickly as I hold this up and you say stapler, I hold this up, you say lid, peanuts. You have to be able to look at y squared minus 1 and go difference of squares. It has to be that automated and quick. I see something squared minus something squared. I recognize him and I say, you're not done. So from that, we're going to create more offspring. So he is going to produce his own 2 offspring. And I'm going to copy down all of the, what I called in the notes, the dead factors. I think that's how I said that. Yeah. So what are the factors of y squared minus 1? Let me ask this a different way. So how do we factor this? We square root y squared, which is y. We square root 1, which is 1. And then we just copy those over. So one of them gets y plus 1, one of them gets y minus 1, and at that point, the problem is over. Now we can hit full send. I'm telling you, this is not light work. Sometimes in math, when I'm teaching kids how to like solve an equation, and on the 19th try, they still can't figure out to add 4 to both sides, I sometimes get frustrated because I'm like, someone's failing here. If you're struggling with this, no one's failing. You're just learning. And it's hard. It's hard to recognize everyone that you have to recognize. So not light work. Don't beat yourself up. Don't say things like, I feel stupid. It's hard, but you have to ask for help. That's the key. Gage, are you good there? Okay.